Hello, everyone. We're here at week 8. Welcome to the session on emotions and how to job. How to job, not that that's a new term and that's a real verb, but what I mean by that is this is about the idea that when you get started with your job, whether that's next week or that's in 3 months or in 6 months, whenever it is, here are some things to keep in mind. And even if you're not starting with your job next week, these are nice things to keep in mind in terms of what you're moving towards and what are some of the conversations that you may have during the course of your interview, especially in that negotiations phase. So just to give a little bit of context to where we are, we're near the end of the 9 weeks, and the last 3 sessions are about closing and negotiating and getting to the right space so that, again, whether your job is in 3 days or in 6 months, so that you're rightly set up for it in terms of what you're planning for your job. Here are things that we've covered so far, and a lot of these are on YouTube in case you missed any of the sessions. Week 8, emotions and how to job. How to job meaning how to show up in the best way possible for the beginning. After this session, you will be able to be kinder to yourself via your emotions. I know that sounds a little bit wishy-washy, but it's actually very specific, and you'll see what I mean. And you're going to be able to plan for the work that you want. And finally, you will have an understanding of how someone recently found a job. All right, so let's get started. Emotions and how to job. Why am I talking with you about this in week 8? You would think that we will have, and we did talk about emotions throughout. So why bring this up again near the end content on things that you need to think about in your job search? Last week, I sent an email to you all and said, what's on your mind? 3 of the comments that came back are these, and I'm going to read them. The market is getting tougher, tighter, and it's hard not to personalize it. How should I prioritize my actions? And even before we ask the how should I prioritize my actions, it's getting tougher and tighter, and it's hard not to personalize it. That is so real, whether you're applying for a job, whether you're like me and reaching out to companies on here's a workshop I can do for you. That's real. And I want you to normalize that this happens consistently. Next comment of what you all sent me. I've been at this for a number of months. What should I do differently? Some things aren't working. It's hard to stay motivated without seeing results. Let me just share this with you, this spiral. When we started, I told you this process is not linear. You know this, but I really wanted to show it to you in a spiral. It's not linear. It's not that you start, you kind of put your resume together, you apply to jobs, and then you get a bunch of different interviews in a timing that works out great for you. No, it's not linear. So the fact that you may have some interviews and then you may have a week or 2 of nothing, and even people that reach out to you may not be writing back. This is real, and some of you may be in a good position right now, and some of you may not in terms of this dynamic. It's just how lousy some parts of this process are. So just know if you are in a place where you may have already been speaking to people and then that goes slowly, or they say they need some number of weeks, or they may even remove the position. That's happened to a number of you. It's no longer a position that they're hiring for. All of this happens, and here are some things that you can do about it. So if you go to the next page, I will be short on the actions and long on the emotions because I've talked to you about these actions. I mention at the end of every time that we come together and meet. You to not get burdened or overburdened by these kinds of things, that it feels like a roller coaster, that there's some days there's no news, which doesn't feel good, that some days there's bad news, like the automatic reply to something that you have applied to online. Here's some actions, and then let's get to emotions. Actions, you know, and I don't do these all the time, but you know that it's all about sleep, exercise, nutrition, and something like mindfulness. Sleep, exercise, I've given you the example before of something like 30-5-5-5, which is 30-second plank, 5 squats, 5 lunges on each leg, 5 push-ups, and 5 crunches. Something that you could, I don't even know how long that takes, maybe 2 minutes, but it's something you can do, especially when you're between meetings, when you're feeling a little bit slumped over and not fun. Nutrition, you can focus on whatever nutrition is working for you. In fact, you can start by having a sip of the water you likely have with you right now. Nutrition, including drinking good water. Meditation, mindfulness, I talk about this, but do something minimal. That's one thing that I'd like to convey today. Do something super minimal, like 1 minute of meditation. I know that sounds ridiculous. Try it. What's the worst thing that could happen? Another action to counteract this roller coaster feel of the job process is some kind of connection actions. And I ask you that at the end of every session. Who's one person you want to have coffee with? You want to go for a walk with? You want to have a phone call with? One person. It could be completely not related to the job search. And then we always talk about another action is doing a job search action. So let me tell you a very practical job search action that's a little bit anti-mind is overflowing. I'm working with someone right now, and this person is just saying, I'm always on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn from morning till evening. After dinner, I come back on. I'm looking for things. I'm trying to research areas, research people, reach out to people. I feel like I'm not really even giving myself a break. And I said, okay, well, what would you like to do about that? And this person said, actually something that might be is let's say in a month, I want to be able to just get off my computer at 5 o'clock. I'm off. I go have dinner with my family. I'm off. I don't come back on. Or if I come back on, it's to do something completely not work related. So why I'm mentioning this is it's something so practical, so simple, and so small. It's so small in a sense. So actually what we agreed to is not that what he proposed is not that he would be doing this every day, but he wanted to do this 2 days a week. Great. Practical, anti-overwhelm. Any comments, drop them into the chat, and I'll watch for what you all are saying. Let me see. Okay, a bunch of you are saying Slack. You love Slack. Okay, great. Now, let's get to the part that you may not have heard about before. So you probably are very familiar with those basic actions. Let's talk about emotions actions. Why? Because it's a roller coaster. I'm going to spend maybe 3 minutes on this total, but I want to give you this so that they're just snippets in the back of your head. So if you do feel, the shoulders hunched over and the slumpy feeling, which we all have. I have it, you have it, we all have it at different times. Here are some things that you can just kind of, pop up in your mind for a moment. Okay. I don't know how motivating this is, but sometimes this actually, because it's the truth, it helps. The idea of this stinks, whatever it is, that you got a rejection from an application that somebody didn't answer that you were really hoping would answer. So I'm not going to include this in my recording, but I am going to tell you right now. I've sent a couple of emails to Mark Cuban because he's doing a super cool company right now, his Cost Plus Drugs, and I think he needs a chief people officer. He never replied. I've tried. I think one or both were video emails. They don't have a chief people officer on their website. I just think it would be really neat. They're all the way over in Texas. I'm in Connecticut. It may not be a match in any case, but I think what the company is doing is super cool. Is it going to be depressing? Not really, but was I hoping that something would come out of it? Yes. So it stinks that something didn't come out or even a conversation, and that's the truth, that it stinks, and it's okay. This next idea for emotions is something you can use with yourself and you may use with kids if you have kids, which is, oh, Senya, this isn't working. You didn't do the right actions. Or even you, Senya, when you sent a thank you note to that person for having a conversation with you, that thank you note, you didn't, you put in too many links about yourself, or you put in too much information about yourself. It wasn't enough about the other person. Your social intelligence was a little bit off here, Senya. So not so great. Like, don't do that again. You kind of blew it. You blew it. So what I can say to this idea is, thanks, idea. I'm going to have lunch with you on Friday. What does that mean? That means, yeah, it's not great, but right now I actually have some things to do. So I'm going to write this down. I'm not going to forget about you, idea. And on Friday, I'm going to give myself a great 15 minutes just to look through what didn't work. What can I learn from it? Rather than just bombarding myself with things like this. Again, if I've written what I think is a little bit of a faux pas or something that wasn't quite as effective in an email to somebody that I'm trying to connect with. Okay, so something bad has happened. Again, not terrible, but something bad has happened. What's the worst part of that? And what's the worst part of that? And then how do I handle it? So the worst part that I sent an email that was not effective to somebody that I really wanted to communicate with is I'm not going to get that role. I'm not going to get that connection. What's the worst part of that? I may not be in that industry or in that field because that's sort of the closest overlapping. What's the worst part of that? I may be looking for something different, or I may be finding something that's a different fit, or I may have a lot more work to do ahead of me. I put the next one in blue. And for those who are just joining, what we're talking about is emotions are rough. Like you all have told me things like this. The market is getting tougher and tighter, hard not to personalize it. So let's look at this idea, which is how would you talk to your friend? The things that stress me out the most, so I have this in this note, are things where done things in a not super socially intelligent way, or not in a super emotionally intelligent way. And I feel like I could have done something kinder or something more thoughtful. That stresses me out. Where in hindsight, I'm kind of ruminating on something like that. And then this comment, I'm by far not the first person to say this, but I want to be the person to remind you of this. How would you talk to your friend? If your friend did something like this, a faux pas, would you say, like I might say to myself, oh, Senya, you blew it. Oh, this isn't going to work out. You really sort of messed up this opportunity. You wouldn't say that to your friend. You would say, oh, Senya, what can you learn from this? What can be helpful? What's another way to look at it? What would you do differently next time? Okay, it's not so great, but other things may happen. So you would talk to your friend differently. Explore that. See if that's something that is the right thing for you when these up and down roller coaster emotions happen. And 2 or 3 more. So these 2 are kind of one. You can get out of a not great emotion by dancing and looking like a fool in your own office or in your own living room. You can get out of a not great emotion by going for a short walk. And by short, I mean down the block and back up the block. I don't even mean around the block. I don't even mean a 1-mile walk. Walking does a lot to our brain. So those are things if you want to switch an emotion. And this, I saved this for last because I think it's the most powerful. There's a link here, which is Emotions Only Last 90 Seconds. I'll click on it for a second and then I'll go away from it. This is a TED Talk or a TEDx talk. It's great. What's in this talk is that the physical embodiment of an emotion literally only goes through your body for 90 seconds. So if you are having the physical embodiment go through like, I'm so sad, or I'm so mad at myself, if that keeps going for longer than 60 to 90 seconds, what's happening is you're ruminating on it and you're having it trigger this emotion throughout your body again and again. This was eye-opening to me when I first saw this, and I've talked about it since. I've looked it up. It blows my mind because I don't have a mad emotion for 90 seconds. I have it for a good 7 minutes. I would say that's probably my average. So if research tells me it's literally in my body for 60 to 90 seconds, what else is going on? What am I doing? So that to me is a calming influence, the knowledge that an emotion only takes 60 to 90 seconds. So I'm giving you 90 seconds as an outlier. So then something that helps me is to say, okay, I got you. I feel you, anger. I got this. I know what's happening. Okay. And that somehow helps the 60 to 90 seconds. You may have you may name your anger or your sadness something. You may have other tricks, other things. And I'll open that up at the very end of our session if there are tips that you want to share that I haven't. What are these all about? So that if lousy things happen, so you can just stabilize yourself and normalize yourself and put them in a productive way. Like, I'm going to take a lesson out of this later when I'm more in a lesson framework as opposed to in a beat myself up framework. I'll pause. We have a lot of content today. So because of that, I know a few of you are saying, whoa, or 90 seconds, great insight. For me too, just, I don't know if I would say life-changing, but probably life-changing. Especially in your family or with kids, it's so easy to just, but wait, hold on. To just get triggered, but wait, hold on. Okay. That was everything on emotions. Let's go on to, if you are starting your job. I know I'm kind of going fast today, but I want to because I really want to get to everything today. You're going to start your job. Let's say it's in 3 days. Let's say it's in a year. I'm not being pessimistic. I'm just saying you may have contract work in the meantime. There may be other things that are happening. When you start your job, there are a few things that if you do these things either before or just at the beginning, they should set you up for more of your success in the job. The hat that I'm wearing for this is very much my hat of Chief People Officer. When I see new people, and actually some of the content that I'm about to share with you is content that as Chief People Officer, I've gotten on our new employee orientation and have shared with new employees in their first week of joining. Why? Because it's so, when you join or when you're just about to join, you have so much going on. There's just so many things and you really want to show up well and you want to do a lot and take a lot on, but there are a few things that will set you up well. So let's jump into them. We are in the workbook, and Katie, would you please post the workbook one more time, just in case somebody didn't see the link. We are in the workbook and we are on page 8 of the workbook. Lots and lots of content. I want you to ask questions afterwards, but let me give you some of this so you can actually internalize it. Page 8 of the workbook. Plan for the work you want. I'm going to have 3 sections here. Way before you start, and when you start. So let's start with way before you start. So way before you start, here are things that may be useful for you to keep in mind and things that may prompt you to have ideas and have potential discussions with your hiring manager. None of this is pressureful, just so you know. They're more conversational ideas, so it may align you well with your hiring manager. Katie, would you please post the link one last time? I think one last time. Okay, so way before you start, let me talk to you about your strengths and lesser strengths. Let me talk to you about the trainer on Tuesdays example, and let me talk to you about growth conversations. Way before you start. So let's say I have received the job offer. Let's say I am either about to accept the job offer or I have accepted it. This might actually even be good when you're about to accept the job offer, when you're having a few last conversations with your hiring manager. You could discuss things like this. So you know what you love doing. You know what your strengths are. You also know what you don't love doing as much. And so, and you know what the job description is, and you know what the job is like because you've had that conversation in the interview. What you can bring up is, here are the things I am so excited to jump in and start doing, whatever those are. So that's strengths, and you can mention them to your hiring manager. I'm going to give you an example that has been effective for a number of people. You may never need to use this, but in case you do. So I've put the initials here. This is fairly public because my professor at Stanford Business School, Jeff Pfeffer, teaches a power of politics class. It's a power class. I don't quite remember the title. Jeff Pfeffer teaches a power class, and he uses this example all the time. I'm pretty sure it's in Jeff Pfeffer's books as well. KF is Keith Ferrazzi. Keith Ferrazzi is very well known as an entrepreneur, as an author. He has a book called Never Eat Alone. Jeff Pfeffer brings us this example in a classroom, in an MBA classroom, and I was his teaching assistant when I was in my PhD program there. He brings up this example of Keith Ferrazzi. Keith Ferrazzi is out, I think, out of business school, about to join a consulting company. And in joining the consulting company, he has a few conversations with his hiring manager, and he says, I'm really great at speaking with clients. I mean, I think he may have said this in a more humble way. I don't know. I love speaking with clients. I'm really excited to problem solve, to brainstorm. You know, I can do spreadsheets and models and analyzing. I'm not the strongest at that. If you have other people who are doing those things, I can do it and I'm fine, and it's part of kind of my package. But I just want to let you know the brainstorming and the strategizing with clients is really my sweet spot. But just let me know if I ever need to do these analyses and models. Here's the brilliance of that. By the way, the result was the hiring manager for Keith Ferrazzi started and did throughout his time there, just giving him fewer of these models and spreadsheets that take a lot of time and a lot of effort. And he started putting him more in front of clients. The brilliance of this is these are non-visible actions. They need to be done. They're non-visible to clients, to the senior consultants, the senior managing directors at the consulting company that Keith was about to work at. So basically, he had, in a sense, pre-negotiated, here are the things that are great and that I love, and here are the things, if you're going to give to someone else, that's fine. That means he is going to do the highly visible things and things he loves more. So put it in your cap somewhere and just think if it's relevant. It may not be, but if it's relevant and if it's conversational and you want to bring up something like that. That was strengths and lesser strengths. Next, way before, so before you start, a trainer on Tuesdays. I have a good friend. She she competed in cycling, a very competitive sport, and she competed and she was a very high level competitor in cycling. She also had a very, very high intensity job in which, I won't say exactly what her job was, but it was around business development, legal, just very, very intense job where she was always needed. People would walk into her office all the time, say, this is important, this is really, really critical. She had a training session, a one-on-one with her cycling coach on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. All the days of the week, all the times of the week, including by text or in person jumping into her office, she would always get emergencies. Oh my gosh, can you help me solve this? Oh my gosh, this happened. She never got an emergency on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. Never got an emergency. Everybody knew, hey, she's competitive, this is important, this is when she meets with her coach. Nobody ran into her office at 4:45 p.m. Nobody. So, as you're starting your work, consider what are your things that are important and consider how you can share those. Now let me give you a phrasing for how you can share things like this. That's not offensive, that's thoughtful, that's kind. This is phrasing from my good friend, Margaret Greenberg. She's my co-author on our business book called Profit from the Positive. A really thoughtful and non-pushy way to align expectations is to say something like, am I correct to assume? So for example, let's use that same example. Let's say I'm the cyclist. I like thinking myself as this athletic cyclist. Let's assume I'm the cyclist. Before I start, we're still in that negotiation phase. Maybe I haven't even signed. This isn't a big deal. It's just a conversational comment. Am I correct to assume that I could continue with my competitive cycling, which would involve that I meet with the coach on Tuesdays at 5 p.m., my coach for one-on-ones? Oh, yeah, sure, of course. Tuesdays at 5 p.m., no problem. And I'll hop on after. I don't mind that. I understand how critical this is. But that time, oh, yeah, no problem. Am I correct to assume? Am I correct to assume? And the third thing that you may want to do way before is to explore with your hiring manager at what frequency and cadence the hiring manager may want to have growth conversations. And also think about how you'd want to call that. I'm not sure if the best thing is to call it growth conversations. Some people call it career conversations. I like growth conversations, but it may be personal. What am I talking about? So let's say Joe is my hiring manager, and we're discussing it, and I'm about to sign, and I would just talk with Joe. Joe, I know that I'm going to be heads down and just delivering great work and really moving everything forward. I'd love to be able to step back at some point and speak with you about how I'm doing, what you want to see me doing more of, what would be more effective for the business. So those are these kinds of conversations that are like growth conversations. When you've worked well with people in the past, at what frequency do you like to have those? So I can put those on the calendar as separate things. Do you want me to check in with you quarterly about that? Is that something you want monthly at the beginning? Is that something you don't want to see for a little while? What frequency would you like? Comments, thoughts, I'll touch on comments in just a little bit, but just getting alignment, because what usually happens is people never have growth conversations unless it's part of the annual performance management cycle, and by that point it's sort of not even fun. It's not really you being proactive about it. So setting expectations, alignment, and then it's on you. You're going to put a meeting on your calendar to remind yourself to set a meeting with your manager. Okay, so way before, we've done strengths, trainer on Tuesdays, and growth conversations. Let me keep going. Before, this is something I've seen people do really well, especially I would say at more senior levels. And by more senior, I mean if you're a people manager and you'll have a number of people on your team, which is you've accepted the job, and now let's say you're going to start in 2 weeks. Sometimes people say, in these 2 weeks, I'd really like to hit the ground running. And so I'd love to connect with one or two people that are going to be important, maybe a peer, maybe another person who is at my hiring manager's level, if these are just good people to connect with in advance. You don't have to do this. You can take 2 weeks and not even think about this upcoming job. But it's sort of a nice demonstration of I care, I want to jump in. And these can be half-hour phone calls. They can be 45-minute phone calls, definitely, or Zoom calls. Definitely don't make them 1 hour. It's just a connection point so that you're not walking in completely cold on day one, if it's someone you may not have met with during the hiring process. So a couple of calls optionally. And then also before, and this might be even on the first day, but before you start or right at the beginning, ask your hiring manager. So let's say my hiring manager is Joe. Whom should I reach out to and how? Who are the people that I absolutely should be talking to at the beginning? Because it might be you're in product and your hiring manager will say, you 100% have to talk to this one principal engineer. This is key to our relationship. And you may not have hit that if you're not explicit about it. You may not have hit that thought or that understanding until later. Okay, so I'm hoping this is good content for the folks that are about to start, whether again in 3 days or in 6 months. And finally, so we've got a way before category, we've got a before category, and now we've got a when starting. At any level, at any role, one of the wisest planning things that you can do is a 100-day plan. As a chief people officer, I've often suggested to new employees who are joining that week, I'll hop on the call and just say, hey, you're high achieving people. You're going to be jumping. You're going to be trying to contribute right away from day one. Here are the things that you have a little bit of breathing room to do. You have a little bit of breathing room to learn. So if you're in an industry where you don't 100% know the product, take these 3 months to really watch past videos, internal videos, learn the product so you can learn. You can put together your 100-day plan and you can ask, a little bit like a listening tour, but that seems more formal. Just find out who to meet with and speak with them. Why would you even do this 100-day plan? It sounds so formal, and what if you kind of mess it up? It can be iterative. So you can say right from the beginning, I'd like to do a 100-day plan and start working on it. As a result of your 100-day plan, you will have, here are the things that I'm working on. I mean, just think, if you're the hiring manager, just think how self-sufficiently you come across. If you walk in and you say, hey, these are the folks I'd love to know whom to speak to. These are the folks that I'll speak to. Here's what I'm putting together. Here's some questions I have. I can put in the link. I'll put in the link to, I'll send on our email and put in the link, a book. I think it's called The 90-Day Plan. I read it when I started new roles. It's great because it asks some of the questions that you can ask as you're doing this listening tour. So if you're putting together a 100-day plan and you have a little bit of it after about 30 days, you have a little more after 60 days, you keep sharing this with your manager. And then it's pretty thorough that after 100 days, here are the big projects I'm working on. And you're constantly working on projects the whole time. Here are the 3 or 4 benefits that you will get. I couldn't decide, do I put up 3 or 4? Here are the 3 or 4 benefits that you're going to get from doing something like this. It doesn't have to be formal. It doesn't have to be a 100-day plan. It can be, what do I really want to make sure I'm working on really well? First, it's going to feed your strengths discussion. So as you're focused on the projects, you can see, what am I energized by? What does the business need? But also, what am I energized by? Then you'll have a few sets of questions that go to the psychological research area of job crafting, but I'll just talk about it in regular human terms. What are you working on? With whom are you working on this? And what is the impact of what you're working on? You will know this as you're putting together your real to-dos. We're talking about the things that you can do to just have an amazing setup for your job. So a 100-day plan, which you will find out what you're going to be working on, with whom. I have a good friend, David Paulet, and he just always says, your best friends are going to be the people that you're working with regularly. So figure out who you'd like to be working with. You may figure that out quickly during the first few days, and you may not. And work on what feels impactful at the company, at the organization. In the 100-day plan, you'll also be able to choose some low-hanging fruit, so things that you can actually make impact on pretty quickly. And because I'm on your side, I don't know what the company is. I wish you all the best in your job and in your company, but I would like you to explore, in thinking about your 100-day plan, what do I next want to put on my resume? So all of the things that I'm going to be working on, like ran this initiative, or spearheaded this, or did all of the work for this, whatever it is, but start to think a little bit about, what is the bullet point? What's the action result? And what are some of the metrics of what I next want to put on a future resume? Much future, but what do I want to put? And last few things when you're starting, make sure to get the download. I put this in quotes. I have a good friend who was in France years and years ago. She's an American, and she was in France and learning French, and she's married to a Frenchman. And she really got her friends together and asked her friends in a very detailed way, this is a time for you all to tell me, what am I doing wrong? So we're going to have coffee once a week, and you are going to please tell me, what am I doing wrong in my French? And the whole conversation was in French. And so that's the kind of thing that is fast feedback. So I very much did a download when I stepped into a company as chief people officer. The people who were on the people team, regular, 2-hour meetings a day, 1-hour meetings some days, but just what's going on in onboarding, what's going on in performance management, but really just getting the information. I know you'll probably do this anyway, but it's just a thing for you to check off. And then you saw me ask you this question in an email recent week. One good thing to ask early is, what is the one thing I should do differently? I'll give you an example from me. I joined this company. It was at about 150 people. We were at an all-team meeting, and the CEO called on me as chief people officer and said, Senya, can you explain this and this? And I explained it. And I actually can't remember if this was an all team meeting or if this was my first presentation to the board with the exec staff, but it was one of those, and I explained what I did. And then later that day, I had a short meeting with him and I said, what is the one thing that I should do better next time? It's very easy for me to get one piece of feedback because I can work on it. It's very clear that a person can think about it. When you ask early, it just creates a vibe of psychological safety, of trust, of this person is willing to make some changes. And by the way, the CEO told me, Senya, tell more stories. So I just want to show that to you, I am telling the story as an indication of the example of one thing that I should do better. And I did start telling more stories. And then finally, I have a link here and it's called the How to Work With Me document. You decide on the vibe of your company. They may already have this, but the idea of this, and go off and read it later, is you can put together a really short document. So 3 sections, 3 bullet points in each section. And it's how to work with me. What would be amazing? What are operational ways of working with me? Like I reply the fastest by Slack, or if it's an emergency, text me, whatever it is. So what's amazing? What would be amazing in terms of our work together? What are operational things? And what are things that don't work so well for me? So those are a few things you can put into a short document that you can share with your team, with colleagues, and just write it with a thought of levity or lightness. So it's not super, super serious, but it's ways of people to get to know you and also know what works and doesn't work. Have fun with these things. These are all things that you can do in those early stages, either right before you sign about the job or as you're starting, or in the weeks before you start, or in the first few days and weeks. Enjoy, have fun with it. I'm going to close this section and go on to have an understanding of how someone recently found a job. So to do this, I'm really, really, really super excited. We're going to have 2 people speak to us back to back. And they're both really thoughtful about what they're doing. But here's the story. These 2 people have recently gotten jobs, and I wanted them to come here and talk with us about what the experience was like. So let me invite the first person. And again, thank you so, so, so very much. Beth, can you join me? And I will try to spotlight you so people see you. And can you just say hi so I can see you?
Hi, I'm here.
How are you? Let me see.
Can you hear me?
Does everyone hear Beth?
I see people nodding
Yes.
their head. Can you
Yes,
hear? Can you
we
hear me?
hear you.
Okay.
Okay, no, seriously, I can't hear her. This is going to be awful.
Oh.
Everyone can hear Beth except me. Wow. Okay. Never done it like this. Beth, could you tell me what's the role that you were looking for? And how long did it take for you to find this role?
Right. So it took me 3 months from the time that I ended my last job and until I start my new job on Monday, actually. So that was the time frame. As far as a role, I was looking for like a senior manager, director level role, but more importantly, I was really looking for an environment that was collaborative, that where leadership people really wanted to share their diverse ideas and come together and make the best decisions possible, and where that kind of collaboration was encouraged. Oh, now I can't hear. Now I can't hear her.
I can hear you now, by the way.
Okay.
I fixed it on my side. Thank you.
Oh, great.
When you started going for these roles in job searching, what was it like emotionally?
So emotionally, it's a lot about what you were talking earlier. I kept comparing it to a roller coaster of there were all of these ups and downs of positives and negatives, and there was a lot of feelings of self-doubt and what's wrong with me and what am I doing wrong and maybe I'm not qualified, all of those types of things. And then there would be literally it would happen in the same day for me. I would get like some kind of a rejection in the morning and I would get like a positive, like a callback or something in the afternoon. And so you were riding these highs and lows, and it was hard to, keep that balanced. And I would just say what helped me was resources like you and some other ones on LinkedIn that kind of talked and shared others' experiences where you felt like, oh, I'm not alone. This isn't me. This is the process. This is what happens. It also helped me. I actually had a few other close friends who were in similar situations. So it helped to have that as a resource to kind of bounce ideas and just have those conversations and support each other. It also helped me, like you talked about, like the exercise, or for me, my faith is very important. So, spending some time of that and stepping away from those things are how it helped me to get through the emotional part.
Thank you so much for that. Like, so much of that resonates with other things that I've heard. Thank you. What about the actual role? How did you find this role? And I'm asking because was it really through submitting online? Was it through connections? How did this role come about?
Right. So for me, when I was going through the process, I kept a spreadsheet of all of the roles that I applied for with some key data about each of them. So I always kind of had that as my tracking device type of thing. And I tried a number of different ways. This particular role that I landed actually a recruiter was recommended to me through a former colleague of mine. And this recruiter had the position opened, and he connected me. My very first interview with this job was with the president of the company. So I was, I was not talking to a hiring manager. I was that, and it was such a change of pace versus some of the other experiences I had been through, which were maybe more cold, like a cold, just a LinkedIn easy apply interview, or even ones through through some other recruiters type of thing.
Yeah, that does sound quite different. Like you're right in the thick of it. I mean, it also shows a lot of respect that that's the first interview. So
right.
Glad. So the connection was to the recruiter. It wasn't to the company yet, but it was to the specific recruiter. Okay.
Right. And he had this specific, the time of this particular job from the start of that process till the acceptance was 3 weeks. So it shows, I think it just speaks to when you find the right thing of how quickly that can move, because I'm sure many on this call and I myself went through ones where it was going for weeks and weeks. And, one of the things I looked at, there are 70 positions out there that I applied for in the last 3 months that I have never heard anything back from. No response whatsoever.
Thank you for sharing that. It's so frustrating, but thank you for sharing that. And then to kind of close, what are the lessons that you learned? It could be on anything that comes to mind.
Well, for me, like I said, it helped me build, I guess, some thicker skin. It helped me utilize resources that I never had before. Like I said, really just kind of reading up and understanding the process. I had been at my most recent position I'd only been there for a short time, but before that I had been with a company for like 16 years. So a lot of this application and interview process and things was pretty new to me. I hadn't done that for some time. So this was a whole, just kind of learning what the landscape is right now. I think also knowing what you're worth and what you're willing to compromise on and what you're not. So taking that time to evaluate that before you kind of go out into that job search area, because if you don't have that foundation, it's really easy to start looking at things and being like, oh, well, I could do that, or sure, it's a little bit less than what I really want to go for, but and don't start compromising too early, I guess, is my thing. I also, what I learned in that process too, as I grow in my roles as a leader, or hopefully when I'm hiring people for my team, of how I want to be better at that and do better in that process. So I'm not putting people through such an emotional roller coaster, and just improving the process in general.
So helpful. Beth, thank you so, so much. You've got a bunch of comments, which I absolutely second. Congrats on it. And just thank you for coming and sharing these lessons with us. Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you, thank you for being a resource and for the opportunity to share.
Just awesome. Thank you so much. Thank
Right.
you. Okay. Thank you for joining us. As you saw, we talked about emotions. We talked about the things to do right before starting a new job. And we had a guest that spoke to us about what they did, their process, which I'm so, so grateful for. Thank you so much for that. Keep moving forward. Keep taking step by step, action by action. Take one moment right here to answer two questions for yourself. What is your one takeaway from everything we covered today? What is your one takeaway? And secondly, what are you going to do? So pause, answer your what is your one takeaway? And secondly, what are you going to do this week on your health, your work, and your connection? So what do I mean by that? What are you doing as a health action this week? And it can be sleep, food, exercise, meditation. What are you doing as a connection action? Who are you reaching out to? It can be a family member. It can be a colleague. It can be someone you want to go for a walk with, someone you want to go have coffee with. It can be a person, but a phone call, a longer phone call than 2 minutes. Who do you want to connect with? So health action, connection action, and finally, your job action. What do you want to do? Do you want to reach out to people? Do you want to reach out to people in a specific industry? Do you want to reach out to somebody who has been a mentor of yours in a previous role, to somebody who has been at your manager's level, but maybe not your manager at a previous role, who's familiar with your work? You could just reach out. You don't know what they remember. They might remember something different from what you remember. They might want to recommend you. They may be seeing opportunities that you're not seeing because those opportunities are early or they're private companies and aren't available yet. Maybe the company hasn't posted. So that could be, so your health action, your connection action, and a work action. For a work action, consider who's a fan of yours, who's somebody who would cheer you on, and maybe somebody who would cheer you on who's a little more senior than you, because maybe that person is seeing opportunities that you're not seeing yet. So health action, connection action, that was what I just talked about, and work action. Your connection action and your work action might be the same, but your connection action can also be a fun connection action. Your work action can be a connection for learning about new things on the job front. Action. Health action, connecting just for fun, and work action that leads to a connection. All the best. Looking forward to seeing you here next time. Thank you, everyone.